Cool. So in here, exists customer by email. How we're going to test this is the same way that we've done with the other tests, which is, if I go back, let's just steal some code. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to copy this guy right here, or actually this. So both of these, and in fact, let me just copy the entire thing. So you'll see that it's going to be very similar. So here, so let's just basically grab this entire test. So this entire test from select customer by ID, and in here, so basically is what we're trying to test, right? So go back. So the other one was with JDBC template, but this is with JPA. So select customer by ID. So let's just test this one. Exists customer by ID. So if I paste that, so obviously this will fail. Now, given we have the customer right here, we're going to insert. Instead of insert, we use save entity. And then instead of select all customers, in here we say find and then all. This gives us all customers. And in here, select customer by ID. So what we are trying to see is whether it exists. So exists gives us a Boolean. So let's just say here our method. So exists customer by ID. And here, let's just say var and then actual. And we can perform the assertion. So here, assert that actual is and then true. So this is this method right here. If we try and run this, this should just work. There we go. You can see that it worked. And for email, so this will be very similar. So we're going to take all of this, and you can see that with tests, it's just a bunch of copy and pasting and then changing things around. So paste that, and you can grab all of this code as well if you need. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to use exist customer by and then email. So exists customer by email, and then pass the email inside. And this ID we no longer need it. And you can see that if I run this, this should also work. And you can see that these tests are a little bit slower, I think, than the other ones, or maybe not. And we are good to go. So we could test that. Basically, if we pass something that doesn't exist, then it should also work. So let's just duplicate this test. And then exists customer by email fails when email not and then present. And what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all of this because we don't need to save. So when we pass an email, which will be randomly generated, this is false. And by ID as well. So this will be very similar. So let's just take that. And here, when the ID does not exist, let's just say when ID not present. And we could have better names for these. So here, we don't need to save any customer. The ID, let's just say -1 as before. And this should be is and then false. Cool. Now let's run all the tests. And hopefully everything should pass. Just give it a second. And hooray, good job. So the other thing that I want to show you is that if I put my breakpoint in here and let's just run the test. Let's just run the test in debug. So that should stop there. There we go. Click on evaluate expression. And then here say under test dot and then find all. If I evaluate, you can see that we have one customer inside. Now, this customer right here is, so if I stop this in debug, let's just stop. So if I open up main, in here, remember, we always add one person to the database. So we have someone to play with, right? So when the application restarts, we always add someone into the database. Now, if you want to have a fresh database with nobody inside, so go back to your test, and in here, within the setup method, you could just say under test dot delete all. Now, if I run in debug, there we go. If I evaluate the expression again, under test dot and then find all, you can see that now it's empty. Cool. So if I resume this, the tests should pass and we are good to go. Let me just remove this, and I'll leave this print line statement in here for reference if you want to, but I wouldn't leave it here. But to be honest, this is pretty much it. So if I remove those imports, we managed to test this customer repository. And as I said, testing this is actually pointless because exists customer by email. What is this? Exists, and you can see that this is actually auto-generated for me, right? So I'm not writing this myself, right? So exists customer by, and then I can pick between any of these. Now, to be honest, we didn't have to test this, right? Because this is generating some SQL for us and it's guaranteed to work. And I think this should be email. Yeah, email. So it's guaranteed to work. But I just wanted to show you the actual process, because sometimes you might have a query right here which will be so complex, and you might even use the at and then query. So here, so sometimes you might use a query, and then here, let's just say select, and then P, and then from. So this is JPQL, right? So select P from, and then I think it's, oh, actually C. So C, and then from, and then customer, and then where. Basically, if you have a custom query, which is like so complex and maybe quite long, then obviously you want to make sure that you are testing that method to make sure that it works, right? Now, with everything that we've learned in this section, you are able to test all the methods that you have within your interfaces that extend JPA repository. If you have any questions on what we've done here, please do drop me a message. Otherwise, let's move on.